I'm on observation duty. The Spot the Difference game that came out on December 14th, 2018, that teetered between both a tonally eerie experience at times and one of absurdity with very and ridiculous anomalies, which is the label this game coins for its varying differences. Although this game originally came out in 2018, it did go on to eventually gain some positive notoriety and some traction within the YouTube landscape a few years later, with the likes of Manly Badass Hero, Game Grumps, and John Wolf, amongst many others, doing playthroughs that garnered a good amount of attention. Once this title really started to pick up, many games of a similar nature started to pop up too, and rather quickly at that. After all, I'd say this game was a big turning point for this kind of genre. Not to say it was the first, but it definitely helped boost the appeal and demand for these types of experiences. I mean, a lot of the games that I covered on this channel are, at their core, Spot the Difference games, just with varying takes on how to present the gameplay loop to make for a fun and unique experience. And in all honesty, most of them were a good time, with some leaning more into the horror aspect that comes with the nature of these games, and some being more lighthearted in their creepiness. Kind of like watching a cheesy B-rated horror film because you're in the Halloween mood. But ironically, even with the amount of titles that I've covered being within this category of spooky Spot the Difference challenges, I've never actually played an I'm on observation duty game. When the first installment for this series released, I didn't have a PC, so there wasn't really a natural avenue for me to find out about this series through Steam, Itch.io, or GameJolt on my own, and so I found out about the game through Let's Plays on YouTube. And I was very intrigued by it. It just stuck with me after seeing it for the first time, as for many others, I'd assume, given how off the wall some of these anomalies were, and it was an enjoyable experience. Eventually, a sequel to this one released on March 23rd, 2020, and with that, more Let's Plays were uploaded to YouTube and its arrival. So, just like before, as I still didn't really fully commit to getting a computer at this point in my life, I went to YouTube and watched some videos over the game, and it was just as enjoyable as the first time around, and it still had that eerie yet goofy charm to it that the first one built off of so well. But from that point on though, my attention simply diverged to other things at the time. I loosely kept up to date with the series as more were following the first two, but admittedly, it wasn't something that I kept close track of. I knew of 3 and 4 being released, but never really watched content on it, and I watched like one playthrough of 5. After that, I didn't check to see if there were more entries within the series. The franchise kind of fell off of my radar within the following years, and it wasn't until recently, maybe around October or November of 2025, that it popped back into my head again to check on where the series was at. Whether there was more installments, whether 5 really was the last one, or even if the developer moved on to another title altogether. Granted, I make mention of the first game within my various uploads of other Spot the Difference games on this channel, so it's not like I completely forgot it, but the aforementioned moment was more in lieu of me realizing I should check in on how it's doing now, and oh boy, was I surprised. So I've already said that I'm aware of 5 games existing within the series, but I had no other knowledge about this whole topic after that. I was guessing maybe another one was released, but nothing more really outside of that thought alone. Do you want to guess how many games were made up to this point in time? 8. There are in total 8 I'm on observation duty games. Kinda insane, really, but hey, if a good thing's good, why mess with it? So now, my dear viewer, what do I do with this information? I mean, it's good to see that the developer still seemingly has a passion for making this kind of game, and it would appear at first glance that the audiences are still enjoying it as well. That's great and all, but what can I make come from this outside of being pleasantly surprised? I can't just come to discover this information and do nothing with it. I have to make something out of it. Then it hit me. I'll try to Iron Man all I'm on observation duty games without dying once. Hey guys, it's me, Names, but you can call me anything really, and welcome to what I am dubbing I'm on Gauntlet duty. Okay, first things first, as you'd probably expect, I'm going to lay out the rule set for how this challenge is going to operate. So the first one is, with this being an Iron Man, that means no deaths. If I die in one game for whatever reason or wherever I am along in the franchise, I'll have to restart from the beginning and try again. The next rule is that all runs will take place on the first level of the entry. Now, I was debating in my mind how to go about this one in particular, as I wasn't sure if randomizing this would be the move or if I should stick to a set course to follow. And if you're wondering why not just play all the levels, as that would be very in line for an Iron Man challenge, I'm just going to tell you right now, that wouldn't be realistically feasible. At minimum, all games have 2 levels to choose from, and at maximum, later games start to introduce 6 levels for the player to engage with. And with wanting to give myself a reasonable goal to attempt that here, I settled on just keeping to the first levels for now. Maybe later on, and depending on how this goes, a randomized Iron Man for this series will be the next step for a challenge video, but as of this video, that's what I've decided on. The next rule is that any entry that offers a hard mode difficulty to play on will be ran on said difficulty level. Now, this was one of the most surprising inclusions to me when I went checking out the later installments. I was expecting there to be no difficulty slider. My knowledge of this franchise, as stated in the intro, was well relegated to just 1 through 5. And looking into the rest of these, I thought they were going to be at the default challenge rating. But coincidentally, the games that I weren't aware of, that being 6, 7,
do not even think about that, we're leaving that in 2025,
and 8 were the ones to start offering this switch for a more difficult experience. So upon realizing this, I thought to make it a requirement after adding it back and forth in my brain for a brief time, but after all, this is a challenge, so I went with it, because why back off when it leans right into the theme? And now for the last rule, which I will give a deeper explanation for why, since it may seem weird at first glance. I will let myself run each game until I win at them once, before moving on and repeating until I've beaten each installment at least once. Now, originally, I wasn't planning on doing something like this when considering this challenge. I actually was fully intending on trying it blind all the way through, meaning doing attempts at the Iron Man without any knowledge of the later entries and just learning and adapting as I go. But the reason why I took a moment to mull this over and give it a good bit of thought was because of this one detail. All games within this series have your shifts going from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., which in real time is 30 minutes. If you can see the connection between the dots that I'm putting up for you, then you know that this will be a long challenge. In fact, a complete run all at once without any breaks will result in a playthrough that's 4 hours minimum. Now, this is where I feel like the real challenge for this comes in. This is an endurance test at its core. It's not like this is a high combo intensive game that requires precise and consecutive inputs alongside the ability to react and adapt to an extreme degree. It's literally spot the difference for the gameplay loop, which in itself is not crazy. But what does become the main thing that you'll be going against for this is essentially yourself. This is why I wanted to do an Iron Man run for this series, as there are a lot of games to cover, but it is also why I'm letting myself play each game to completion at least once, as sticking to blind runs would most likely result in way too much time spent trying to beat this. After all, I want to do this, but also not take forever in doing so, especially since this is the first video I'm doing in this style, so this rule is more for time's sake than anything else. Now, with that all out of the way, let's dive into my experience with the practice rounds. Like I mentioned before, as much as I referenced this game franchise, I've never actually played any of the entries. So going into even just the first one here definitely presented a learning curve that I had to get used to. But for what it presents, it could have been way harder intro when compared to the other games. There are overall only 5 cameras to go through for the first level, which is simply named the Old House. The bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, the toilet, and the balcony/outside. Alongside that, there are 12 anomaly types that you can report in this entry. Abyss presence, camera malfunction, door opening, extra object, ghost, intruder, light anomaly, object disappearance, object movement, other, painting anomaly, and shadow anomaly. Most of these are rather self-explanatory, and as you'd expect to see them, one in-game. A door or cabinet opened, that's a door anomaly. An object disappeared, object disappearance anomaly. A painting looks off, that's a painting anomaly. It's a pretty simple and well-rounded list to consult, and nothing too overwhelming either, in my opinion. Obviously though, the difficulty for this game comes down to how subtle these changes can get. But there is another factor that can cause some disruption when going into the game for the first time. And what is this factor exactly? Well, quite simply, it's figuring out how the game wants you to report anomalies. While most differences are exactly what they look like, not all of them follow that tendency, and the game doesn't provide direct examples beforehand so as to avoid potential confusion. It instead throws you right into it and lets you figure it out on your own, and while you may think you have eventually figured it out, it may not be correctly labeled according to the game. Like this anomaly, for example. What would you consider this from the list of differences you have at your disposal? A light anomaly, a camera malfunction, a ghost, considering it looks like an orb? It's rather up in the air when you first encounter this, so you just have to pick and try an option. Let's say you try reporting it as a light anomaly. You get into your menu, click the respective room along with the suspected anomaly type, and hit send to report. Yeah, so that's actually an extra object, not a light anomaly. And as you can see, it takes a while to send a report. So getting something incorrect, but then waiting for that amount of time to see if you were even right to begin with, can be rather bad. More specifically, this becomes a bit of a problem later on in the night when differences are piling up and you have to identify one then and there. Otherwise you die, as having 4 anomalies active at once is the cap for said failure across all games. Now, admittedly, there aren't many changes like this as a whole, but the few that are there can definitely cause you to trip up if you aren't prepared. And with freshly getting into this game for the first time, these few differences threw me for a loop. After all, I may think they look like one thing, but if the game doesn't agree, then I have to disregard that train of thought and view it like the game wants me to. Also, I kind of have beef with this change because I just don't really agree with it on a fundamental level. Like, dude, it's a transparent circle. Why would I consider that an extra object if it's see-through? Looks more like a spirit orb to me, but hey, that simply isn't the case, I guess. I mean, like, for whatever reason, even though it doesn't look like it has any weight, it's transparent, it looks like it's floating. Realistically speaking though, this is something that you'll get accustomed to after a moment, but it is worth mentioning as it reflects my experience with getting adjusted to how this game operates and how accidentally getting something wrong can be impactful if it's at the wrong moment. This detail is especially true when getting into the later entries of the series. Granted, I think the report timer is the longest for the first 3 games, then it gets shorter as you continue, and I'm not really going off of solid numbers for that, but rather feel. Maybe in editing I'll fully time it out for information's sake, but either way, this highlights how being unsure, no matter the wait for fixing an anomaly, can cause deaths just due to the fact that being forced to idle, since you can only report 1 anomaly at a time, means another anomaly can pop up and reach that difference gap. Aside from that slight bump for me though, as I continued to play the first entry, I started getting used to correctly identifying anomalies the way the game wanted me to, so it was no longer a case of trial and error in regards to reporting, and more down to the simple fact of, can I spot a small change in time, or will I miss it? And it definitely took me a bit to really train myself to get into the groove for this kind of thing, and most deaths were caused by subtle changes, rather than big ones that I wasn't acknowledging, due to being hyper-vigilant on a small detail I expected to switch. It was stuff like this that got me out more often than not. Eventually though, I started making paths for my eyes to follow throughout each room that covered potentially anomalous spaces, which let me figure out most changes more from implicit memory. This then let me put more effort into directly checking certain spots that I knew I would miss otherwise after the scan. For example, let's consider the living room for this path. The place that I started immediately upon getting to this camera is the bottom left corner of the painting on the right wall in front of the wooden chair. From there, I would trail to the wooden chair beneath it, then up over the plant into the packing box, then down to the headphones, and then up again to the plush chair next to the cabinet. From there, I move across the left wall to the next painting, dip a little to the wooden chair, and then round to the left corner with the stack of boxes. After that, I look downwards to the last wooden chair in the living room and complete the path. Covering this trail allows me to check if the darker painting moved to the right, as the back of the chair lines up with the bottom left corner, if the 2 rightmost chairs swapped, as, again, the chair's back won't be parallel to the painting, if there's a light anomaly on the table, if the packing box disappeared, if the headphones moved to the right, if the painting changed from its normal picture, if there's an extra object on the top left chair, which is a floating orb, if there is an intruder in the kitchen on the sink counter, and if there is a void presence growing in the room. If none of those changes are there on that sweep, I then start looking individually on other spots that the path doesn't cover, like the intruder that can appear in the bottom right corner outside on the balcony. Having patterns like this to follow helped me scan the room quickly before dedicating more time to looking for more specific changes if I didn't see one already. or even anomalies I never saw before. And if I didn't see something out of the ordinary off of the path, then that let me move on to the next room without worry that there was a swap I didn't notice. I started to do this for all the rooms over the course of playing this entry, and it really started to click for me by my 4th attempt to beat the night. The first 2 times I attempted this, I was trying to memorize each thing individually without reference to another object or detail, and while I did make some progress, it wasn't the best way for me to approach this. The 3rd run, I started that method of pathing throughout the house, which got me further, and by the 4th attempt, I had most rooms mapped out. The 5th attempt for me was finding and remembering the more subtle difference off of the path to check for, if I wasn't aware of them already, and by the 6th run, I had it on lock. I beat the first I'm on observation duty game and was relatively confident in my ability to stay consistent with the beginning game, which would just be further compounded on considering I was going to be seeing the first installment every attempt I try a full run. So overall, I'd say this game wasn't too difficult once I started getting into the groove for it. I'd say most of the anomalies in this one aren't too subtle, but definitely were small enough to cause a few failures. Once I noticed them though, they seemed rather obvious when they happened and I could catch them relatively quick unless I wasn't paying attention. If anything, getting adjusted to playing this was where the most challenge came from, and once I was firmly in observation mode, it came more easily than not. I didn't hit a point where I felt stuck, and nor did I really feel any frustration with trying to figure out what changed. It was a rather well-paced progression to beating the night, with me getting further and further each attempt and noticing more and more anomalies as well. In total, for my practice runs to beat I'm on Observation Duty 1 once, I spent 146 minutes or 2.43 hours. Again, an in-game run is 30 minutes real time for reference. I died a total of 5 times with 6 attempts all around, and I found a grand amount of 104 anomalies over the course of this entry. Not all unique, obviously. And so, with this installment under my belt, now we move on to the next game. With going into I'm on Observation Duty 2, after getting used to the pace of I'm on Observation Duty 1, I can say my starting attitude towards this title was one of semi-confidence. I was adjusted to how this franchise operates on a base level for now, and I felt ready to juggle that loop and add on more possible layers if necessary. After all, I didn't imagine a sequel would just be the same experience one-to-one without some new stuff. And I also remembered some of the new things from the videos I watched on this entry a while ago, so I had some knowledge from before, but nothing too crazy. It was mainly one thing that really stuck with me, and I'll get to that soon. Like the previous games, I'm on Observation Duty 2 has 2 levels to choose from: the Cursed House and the House of the Past. As per the rules, the Cursed House will be the level played on, and with it comes a few changes to differentiate itself from the old house. Here we now have 9 cameras to swap between rather than 5, and we have 11 anomaly types to pick rather than 12. Of the scenes to observe, there is the bedroom, living room, kitchen, toilet, yard/outside, garage, study, dining room, and hallway. And of the anomaly types to watch and report for, there is camera malfunction, corpse, door opening, extra object, ghost, intruder, object disappearance, object growth, object movement, object shrinkage, and painting anomaly. Abyss presence, light anomaly, shadow anomaly, and other have been removed from the list for this level, with corpse, object growth, and object shrinkage being new ones to look out for. Now, this is what I was referring to when I mentioned remembering some things from the videos I watched previously. I don't know exactly why, but these 2 anomaly types stuck with me, and it was what kept me from being completely confident about tackling this game in particular. Even though I retained this information, I just couldn't recall how minute these swaps could get, and that had me approach this cautiously. On my first 2 attempts, these 2 were always the ones that I was looking out for, as I was sure that if anything were to give me difficulty here, it would be this. I mean, there's so much here that can be utilized for this type of difference, and I wasn't putting anything off the table for it. Even the really small details that I felt would have been diabolical to do, like these shelf items in the dining room, or these decorations on the back wall in the living room, or even the kitchenware on top of the cabinets here. They all seem like prime places to have an anomaly like that, so I was staying vigilant for them. But in all honesty, I think I was hyping this up in my head a little too much, because from what I experienced in my practice attempts at this game, these items never changed. I'm not even sure if these areas can change. In fact, I've literally never seen them deviate from the norm once. Granted, this level of scrutiny did let me notice some more subtle changes I may have missed otherwise, so the effort was for naught. It just led me to realize other anomalies in place of what I was originally expecting. And to even double down on this mechanic being less threatening than I'd recall, I'd say there are only about 9 places where these anomalies can happen. The closest chair in the living room, the ketchup bottle in the kitchen, the bath mat in the bathroom, these 2 lawn chairs in the yard, this propane tank in the garage, this box in the study, and these 2 chairs in the dining room. I mean, there is so much here that can be used for this type of change, so it makes sense to be paranoid about it. I was juggling so many small details in my brain to check for because I was thinking there'd be so many to find, and yet nothing as chaotic as that happened. Or at least I never seen anything to prove me wrong. So with realizing this anomaly is less of a threat as I played to beat this game once, I started refocusing on the typical swaps I was used to, and from there I started making good progress on this installment compared to the first entry. Now, one thing that I really noticed with this game around my 3rd attempt was this. Remember how I was talking about eye pathing in the previous game, where having a set motion to like implicitly check areas allowed me to quickly scan stuff? Well, obviously you can do that here, and all games, really. Well, maybe aside from 3, but we'll get to that soon enough. But for this one in particular, it seems like you can just do like one motion for each room and it'll cover all spots for like a potential anomaly. It genuinely feels like you just need to scan in a spiral motion for all the rooms and you're rather set. Now, I will say following this pattern mainly allows for the smaller details to be caught, at least for me, as the bigger anomalies, the more obvious and out there ones, will be plain as day to see, but these subtler changes all seemingly fall on this kind of path. At least in my experience. Like, nothing really minute happens within the center of the screen. Take the kitchen, for example. If you start here and just do a circular scanning motion, then you're practically hitting all spots for anomalies to happen, both big and small, but mainly small ones. I have never seen anything on the subtler end take place really within the center of the kitchen. The same goes for the living room. Like, you just start on the left with the coffee table and the shelves, then circulate around the outskirts of the room. A lot of the small changes will happen around here, and I'd say all scenes follow this same pattern. Now, again, this isn't to say nothing will change within the center frame of any given camera, but the ones that do happen tend to be more obvious. It seems like for this level, all the details to look out for are pressed up against the walls. With I'm on Observation Duty 1, there were the headphones on the center table that could shift to the right, or the mug on the dresser in the kitchen that could vanish, but there isn't really anything like that for the second installment, and when I started believing that, it let me finish the game rather quickly in comparison to the first one. In fact, I've already mentioned having 3 attempts at this one in particular, and the third one was where I really started to just dial in, as I said. So it literally just took me one more run, and I beat this game. My first 3 tries were on the shorter end time-wise, between like 14 to 18 minutes rather than having attempts failing at the 25 to 29 minute mark. And in those tries, I ironed out a few details rather quickly, like how much attention I should be giving to finding enlarged or shrunken objects, what the smallest change can be for each room, and what's the best way for me to scan scenes to check for details implicitly. So after my 3rd run, I put this all together and locked in for my 4th attempt and beat it relatively smoothly. Relatively. I did have this strange moment though on the winning run where I went to report an anomaly, and instead of flashing the reporting and fixing screen, it just stayed stuck on the reporting screen. This popped up and then just did not go away, which is funny to say because this caused me to sit and wait in baffled silence for like around 2 minutes. And this was at the end of the night, so I was literally just left there with bated breath, waiting to see whether or not this bug would fix itself or if I would die because of it. Fortunately, I didn't die. When the night ended, the congratulations screen took over in its place and told me how many anomalies I had fixed, which, even more funnily enough, had been 23 out of 26. I was 1 off from actually losing here. This small bug, which I don't know why happened, could have given me the ultimate rage bait moment of my life, as it's not like I was playing for full runs here. This was just practice. It would have been the most stupid way of wasting my time. And now I'm aware that something like this can happen, which made me somewhat paranoid of this coming out of left field to, you know, ruin a Gauntlet attempt when I started doing them. Fun. So overall, this game took me 81 minutes, or 1.35 hours, to beat once. I died 3 times and had 4 attempts in total, and I found 52 anomalies altogether for my practice round. I'd say having momentum from beating the first game and knowing what styles of differences can really happen helped in lowering these stats by a lot. Now we move on to I'm on Observation Duty 3, which definitely isn't your typical installment within this series. Now, I keep making mention of the fact that this entry in the franchise is the odd one out when compared to the rest. And why is that the case exactly? Well, it's quite simple. It's a walkable environment. Taking the chance to put out something new yet familiar for this franchise is cool in my opinion, and at first, I was rather apprehensive about this title just because of how different it was. Suddenly shifting from static points of view to being within the anomalous place itself was a little overwhelming, and I thought it was going to give me trouble to really adjust to this. After all, you can't see everything laid out at once in this entry like with the cameras from previous games. You have to go in and check every corner there is to make sure nothing is missed. And if you happen to not explore every angle that's physically possible, then small swaps can happen and go unnoticed for the entirety of your time playing this game. I felt like I had my work cut out for me here. I wasn't really expecting a smooth ride in practicing this one, and I was already thinking about whether or not this could be a problem for me when it came to full Gauntlet runs, but only time could tell, and so I went on to trying it out. Yeah, so this one actually wasn't that bad. I beat it in 2 attempts. My first run was just getting used to the layout and taking in environmental details, so it was only about like 7 or so minutes. After that, I beat it rather decisively. While I was originally hesitant about being within the environment itself rather than observing from fixed points of view, the change in perspective brought with it a better sense of spatial awareness that I'd soon come to really attune to. With walking through the place and being able to see everything unrestrained, it made it easier to report anomalies for me since I could really go up and scrutinize different areas. I could just walk into different rooms and feel something was off at a general glance and then really get into the nitty-gritty of figuring out that feeling. Also, I think the developer realized just how out of the norm this installment was, and so made the subtle anomalies less intense compared to previous ones. It was really only about 5 or 6 changes that I felt like were more on the smaller end that could be hard to notice, with everything else feeling easier in comparison, and most of those 6 anomalies are mainly attached to portraits. But before I forget, I should also tell you how this game operates since it's not the typical experience one may expect. The first level for this game, and is the one that you have been seeing actively, is called The House with No Past. It has 6 rooms, 7 if you count the hallway, with those being the kitchen, the bathroom, the garage, the study, the bedroom, and the living room. Now, for the anomaly types, there are none. At least not a list like before. Instead, you point and snap pictures on your phone to report anomalies. So there's no need to worry about what you should categorize as an anomaly. You just have to find and click a pic on what you think has changed, and that's that. And also be close enough to do so. If you're too far away, even though you feel like you aren't, the game won't count what you reported as an anomaly. Overall though, as I said a moment ago, this game actually wasn't that bad for me, and I just needed 2 tries to beat it once. Most changes were easier to spot since I could really inspect various areas, and the game even has some sound cues to nudge you in the right direction when stuff does happen. So all my worry from before was for no real reason. In total, I spent 37 minutes on this game with 1 death and 2 attempts to beat it, and I found a grand sum of 29 anomalies by the end. Now, we can move on to the 4th game for this series, and I can tell you that this one returns to typical form, so sorry if you like this style more, as it's the only one like this for the franchise. For the 4th entry, I'm just going to jump into what it offers off the bat as it's returning to its roots, so you already know what to expect mostly. There are 3 levels to choose from here, with the city house being the one to focus on. For this stage, there are 6 rooms to comb through, that being the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, the study, the hallway, and the sauna. For the anomalies, there are, yet again, 12 to choose from. This includes camera malfunction, door opening / closing, extra object, ghost, intruder, object disappearance, object movement, painting anomaly, and the 3 returning categories of fizz presence, light anomaly, and other. But there is now one more new type here as well, with it being simply called distortion. The distortion differences just warp the sound and view of a camera when entering it, if it happens, plainly put. So there are more on the noticeable end, with even sound alone being a dead giveaway for when such an anomaly occurs.
Now, in all honesty, I'm on Observation Duty 4 feels the most similar to I'm on Observation Duty 1, in my opinion, for the first level. There aren't too many details to keep track of, it's back to black and white rather than colored scenes, and there aren't insanely subtle differences, but small enough to trip you up if you're not paying attention. And with feeling very confident with I'm on Observation Duty 1 and having a groove down for that entry, I think some of that transferred over to this game, as I beat it in one go. I was able to dial in and get it done rather on top of things anomaly-wise, nothing perfect though, so there isn't going to be much said here for this installment. I don't necessarily want to have these segments be about all the changes that I encountered, but rather, I want them focused on my experience with the difficulty they present. If something did give me trouble, then it is worth mentioning, and if that's certain swaps, then so be it. But truly, this game didn't give me much difficulty in beating it once, and most of what you'd see here is similar in execution to I'm on Observation Duty 1, just with more refined graphics and varying components to exchange in and out. The last thing that I will mention though about this game is that I like the switch up for the report menu in this entry compared to the first two. While it can make for some rather noticeable visual clutter when accessing said menu, I like how all the options are laid out in a grid pattern instead of having a list to scroll through. It makes for an easier time, even if just by a little, to quickly select the room you want and the respective anomaly with it as well. This is a small thing to note, but it made for a better experience, in my opinion. Plus, I want to give summaries of what each game holds when covering them, and this is a change that I felt would just feel weird to leave out, so yeah.
Overall though, I spent 30 minutes beating this game, which coincides perfectly with my one attempt, and I found 27 anomalies by the end of the night. Pretty plain and simple. This is the only one in the practice runs to be so nicely wrapped up and topped with a bow. Now, onwards from this midway point to I'm on Observation Duty 5, which is the last traditional I'm on Observation Duty game for the series. Following up from I'm on Observation Duty 4, I'm on Observation Duty 5 is pretty similar in presentation as the previous games, having similar looks, menu layout, and intensity of environmental details, with maybe just a little more to keep track of. Although this time there are 6 levels to choose from, with some of them having a different mechanic for reporting to what the franchise typically uses. But, as per the rules, this is going to cover the first level, which is called the school. Within this building are 6 rooms to scan through: Classroom 1, the corridor, Classroom 2, the office, the gym, and the toilets. And the anomaly types set to appear for this level are Abyss Presence, Camera Malfunction, Distortion, Door Opening/Closing, Extra Object, Intruder, Light Anomaly, Object Disappearance, Object Movement, Picture Anomaly, Other, and TV/Monitor Anomaly. So another 12 categories to pick from, but without the inclusion of Ghost, and with the splitting of Pinning Anomaly into both Picture and TV/Monitor Anomaly. Outside of that information, that's the gist for what's in this level, and like with I'm on Observation Duty 4, this entry didn't give me much trouble all around when playing it. Now, I didn't complete it in one attempt like 4, but I didn't need more than 2 tries in the end. With getting into the mindset for these games, and having more experience under my belt with them now, it simply sharpened my awareness and ability to spot differences, which tracks, you get better as you play. But also, the momentum from the previous 2 games carried over with me, so I was just naturally on a roll. I'd say this entry is similar in environmental detail to I'm on Observation Duty 2, but with less of the things that could change being pushed up against the walls of the room. Most things I was able to pick up on relatively quickly if they were on the smaller end, and my first run ended around the 27-minute mark because I let one thing or two slip as I was hyper-focused on finding something else, rather than staying broad in my search for any last-minute swaps. At this point in my practice rounds, I felt pretty confident in playing to the level of how the game expected me to play them. And I started to realize at this moment as well that something I needed to remind myself not to do was hyper-focus for something when I still need to search for other anomalies alongside them. Feeling better at this can be somewhat of a double-edged sword, as if I let myself go too unchecked, then I'll just miss obvious stuff I normally be checking on. It's a fun case of locking in, but not locking in too hard, to the point where I basically just have blinders. Once that first attempt was over and I started my second, it went off without a hitch, really. Nothing was slipping underneath my radar, and I felt consistent in reporting changes as soon as they happened. There really isn't much else to say here in terms of my experience. I'm on Observation Duty 5 is like I'm on Observation Duty 1, 2, and 4, so I'm used to how this operates, especially with there being no real big switch-ups in terms of what to look out for or how to go about reporting. And I will also say that these practice rounds were being done one after another, so when I said I was just moving earlier with momentum, that really is why. I was literally just going down the line as much as possible in one sitting. So maybe you already assumed that, but maybe you didn't. So I'm just gonna clarify in case. So all around, I spent 45 minutes on this game, with 1 death out of 2 attempts to beat this once, and I reported a total of 50 anomalies combined for these 2 runs. And shout out to the Skinny Prince in the gym. He appeared in each run for my practice rounds for this. That's a real supporter right there. Granted, I never actually saw him. I mean, the game told me I'd fail if I didn't report him immediately and stayed off the gym camera, so yeah. He seemed pretty chill though. Now, as I've made mention in the transition from 4 to 5, I'm on Observation Duty 6 is where the game kind of leaves behind the beginning aesthetic that this series had. So, what does this entail exactly? Well, for starters, the game visually has changed. It has brought back colored environments for 1 to flip through, and while the gradients for them don't pop as much as 2, with the scenes all around being more muted, it retains that vibe of feeling like security cameras. Like, of course it won't be ultra high quality, this is security work, which fits for the series theme, in my opinion. The next change, which is the biggest, is the reporting system. Now, instead of having a list to scroll through or the broad layout of anomalies, 6 simplifies this to a simple click and hold method. Along with that, there is a right-click option that pops up an anomaly menu for changes that aren't contained to one choosable spot, with another menu following suit for the respective room when using said option. While there was a bit of charm for how the beginning games did their reporting system, I much prefer and enjoy how I'm on Observation Duty 6 is done. It feels more intuitive for a spot the difference game, it's less clunky in terms of going back and forth from one point on the screen to another, and it drastically reduces visual clutter if that was a bother. This refinement does make it so that the entry loses out on that feeling of being an older I'm on Observation Duty game though, which did have its positives. The reporting system was rather synonymous with those beginning installments, and it served as a way thematically to keep people on their toes when feeling pressured to quickly report differences. I don't really want to phrase it like this, but it gets this feeling that I want to convey across better than what I could possibly write. It's iconic. For those early games, that reporting system tied with the experience it offered brought it all together for the true I'm on Observation Duty experience. This franchise kicked off with that type of system, and so it holds a significant part in portraying its identity if someone has never heard of this and is just getting into it. But as you can see, this is a long-running series, and so a switch is expected at some point, and I very much welcome how the dev did it. Now, the last change that this game does, which I've already talked about at the start of this video, is that it offers a hard mode. This increases anomaly difficulty in terms of how subtle they are and introduces penalties for making incorrect reports. Truly what I think is happening here is that 6 is this transition point for this franchise in reinventing itself, while still being true to its off-putting yet oddly funny nature. From I'm on Observation Duty 6 and onward, it seems that the dev is leaning more into the challenge that this genre can present, which is further built upon considering the color palettes used here are more monotone than contrasting, like I just brought up in the previous bit. I mean, even before starting a level, the loading screens present lore blurbs for you to read before diving into play them, along with controls for the game, which has never really been directly stated before in previous titles. I know that that doesn't relate to the challenge I'm going for, but it shows that this is the start to a new era of I'm on Observation Duty games, which I'm all for. But with all that aside though, I'll now get more into what this entry specifically holds for us and my experience with it. I'm on Observation Duty 6 has 6 levels to choose from, with the train being the one played for this challenge. Within the train, there are 6 rooms to observe: the passenger cabin, the private cabin, the sleeping cabin, the dining car, the water closet, and the driver cabin. As I said before, 6 implements a click and hold system for reporting, but for the right click menu, there are 6 types to choose from: Abyss, Camera Malfunction, Distortion, Ghost, Steam/Smoke, and Light Anomaly. Of the differences just all around though, they mainly stick to how it was before, just minus the whole menu it used to have. So most things will be object movements, object disappearances, doors opening or closing, images changing, intruders, all the like. Now, I will say that I did try this game both on normal mode and hard mode just to see how big of a difference the difficulty increase would cause, and I could honestly say that I originally felt no difference. On both runs, I only needed 2 attempts each before beating the game, and what I saw in normal mode was mostly reflected back to me in hard mode, so it was the usual stuff of things just slightly moving, small things appearing or disappearing, and a smattering of like, you know, what the hell is that? Get it off my screen, it has intentions to kill me. No. Granted, There are definitely some cheeky swaps to be had in this entry, as I didn't one try either difficulty, but I think like with I'm on Observation Duty 3, the dev didn't want to go too heavy-handed with the first levels since it's a transitional phase. New material is being brought in and other stuff is being refined, so this is like a small dip into the pool rather than diving into the deep end immediately. And of the cheeky swaps that I saw in practice, they're borderline diabolical. After all, I died my first attempt towards the middle of the night due to said cheeky anomaly. So I feel like if the dev wanted to, these anomalies could have been taken way further. And we'll see that soon enough. All around though, I spent 46 minutes to beat this game once, had 1 death out of 2 runs, and found a total of 41 anomalies. For normal mode, that is. For hard mode, I spent 50 minutes to beat that version once, had 1 death out of 2 attempts as well, and found a total of 46 anomalies instead. Again, I think I'm on Observation Duty 6 wasn't gunning at full gas like it could have, since it's testing out these new reigns, but it showed the potential for how much it could ramp it up to. And with that said, we now move on to said ramped up entry. I'm on Observation Duty 7. I'm gonna be completely blunt and just say it right now. This game was my Hindenburg. I was in the zone coming off of those last few games, and I felt like there wasn't going to be any hard wall for me to oppose coming into these last 2 entries. I was feeling good in my ability to simply report anomalies, and while I wasn't overconfident, I thought this may be similar to how my practice with 6 went. But boy was I wrong. This hit like a fully loaded 80,000 pound semi-truck, followed by a fully loaded 511,000 pound blimp. Like, I don't know fully why, but this game was just hard for me. It had me in a chokehold for a good amount of time, and it really solidified how these new era I'm on Observation Duty titles are willing to lean into the challenge that the Spot the Difference genre can present. Anyways though, let's get into what this game has to offer. For the 7th installment, there are 6 levels to pick from, with the spa being the main attraction this time around. Within the spa, there are 6 cameras to scan through: the lobby, the dressing room, the main pool, the cold pool, the water slide, and the sauna. Now, there is a bit of a change to how the reporting system in this one works compared to 6. The click and hold system is still in play, but now when you finish holding on a specific area, a menu pops up with anomaly types to attribute to that location. Of these types are dead body, door anomaly, extra object, image anomaly, intruder, missing object, object manipulation, object movement, and object replacement. There is still the right click menu as well, which you can now access through a button in the bottom right if you want. And on the menu, there returns Abyss, camera malfunction, lights rather than light anomaly, and smoke/steam/fog, fog being the new addition to this category. Ghost has left the menu for this level, and Rift is in its place instead. Outside of that tweak though, the rest is the same in terms of core gameplay mechanics as far as this challenge is concerned. At first, when I started practice on this, I was expecting it to be rather similar in vibes to 6. I was thinking nothing absolutely crazy was going to happen, but maybe there'd be a small increase in anomaly difficulty so it didn't feel exactly like 6. In the beginning 10 minutes or so for this entry, match that energy. Nothing too outlandish happens and these swaps aren't that intense. If anything, I found myself waiting in the beginning more often than not. I'd say this game allows for more potential waiting time between anomalies spawning as a whole, but especially at the start of the night. Some runs I felt like I wasn't actually missing something, but rather just waiting for a swap to take place. It had me very confused since the other installments, I didn't feel like I had this much time to kill in between changes entering these 6 possible scenes. On one hand, it kept me paranoid because going for so long without anything happening in a Spot the Difference game makes you feel rightly doubtful. But on the other, it made me feel reassured since I knew I wasn't letting something slip. The warning message would have popped up otherwise. It definitely threw me for a loop, but I didn't let that fully lower my attention on the environment. Speaking of the environment, I think this ultimately was one of the reasons for why I had trouble with this game. Like I pointed out in 6, these newer entries forego the black and white aesthetic in exchange for a muted color palette. A lot of what you see feels like they can blend together, with just a few splashes of color that actually pop here and there. That, combined with how either a room can feel very cluttered, like the dressing room, or rather barren, like the cold pool, makes for something that's naturally deceptive. Originally, I felt like the dressing room was going to be my main weak spot when I went and practiced this game, and it kind of was, but the other rooms were able to pull ones on me multiple times as well. Because they're so sparse and seemingly organized in how they cluster details, respective anomalies in these rooms have to be subtle to match. And if it's not one of the very obvious ones, then I was just absolutely lost. And they can get really sneaky. The water slide, sauna, and lobby have three of the most dastardly swaps that I can think of. And I'm debating about whether or not I'd want to actually show these back up my case, but there's a part of me that doesn't, just on the off chance that you play these games yourself. So you know.
You can feel the pain.
Aside from that, though, the muted colors and the sense of safety due to some of these rooms feeling easy caused me not to catch on quickly to some things that swapped. Because once I was past the opening 10 minutes for this night, it would just always go downhill from there for my attempts. And at first, I wasn't even aware it was getting worse so quickly. There was a part of me that was thinking I was just waiting for something, since the beginning could be like that, but as soon as the warning message flickered to life across the screen, I would always feel absolutely baffled. Truly, it was like whiplash. Over the course of my attempts, I had so many moments of bewilderment because everything really did just feel the same. And with every death came a smack to the face to lock in and figure it all out. But this was a little easier to do, not completely, obviously, thanks to a little addition in 6 that I didn't mention yet. Now, previous games in this series never told you what was changed, nor the room it was in. After all, it's a spot the difference game. That would take away from the challenge. Instead, it would just say something along the lines of, the anomalies have taken over, you fixed X amount out of Y total. But with the tonal shift in 6, that changed. Now, if you were to die, the game would give you what room it happened in and what anomaly type it was. And that bit of providing extra information carried over to 7, and even to 8, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. I think the dev did this both for the sake of giving the player a nudge if they were truly stuck, and so that some anomalies could be truly evil in what they change, as the player would be given a breadcrumb to what it was that swapped, rather than nothing, thus making the player, smash their head through a wall. But regardless of the reason, this at least pointed me in the direction of what was different, and that was a start. So slowly but surely, I was making some progress with each attempt, not by leaps or bounds though. Even with having a tip off on what deviated from the norm, it still took me some time to really spot said thing, and if anything, it let me find the subtle but not too subtle ones more quickly, especially ones that were for these sparser rooms. Once I realized that was the thing I was missing previously in these scenes, it never left my mind to check it consistently. I definitely was breaking away from my usual strat of quickly scanning a set path to implicitly check on things, and was more heavily relying on just straight up remembering everything directly. Now, I could have went back and forth between scanning to find something implicitly and scrutinizing more explicitly, but after 3 or 4 times, I just said screw it and went full blown, I will memorize every detail by the end of this, and if I don't, I will make my own bomb cyclone to descend upon the US, because apparently some people think other beings have the capacity to do that. So with switching up how I was approaching this, I continued making progress piece by piece, slowly putting together what it was that I missed from before and adding it to my mental rotation. But again, some differences truly took me forever to realize. Admittedly, it's a double-edged sword to change my playstyle to be more scoped in like this, as, like I previously mentioned, this can make me ignore other known details if I'm so locked in on potentially finding something else. Like, if I don't remind myself to just zoom out and be more broad in my checks, it typically would result in a failure. But at this rate, I was ready to just brute force it. By my 5th attempt, I was just throwing my head at the wall to make it work, as I was so taken aback by how much this entry was beating my ass. I don't think it was until my 6th run that I had finally realized something that kept consistently being in my last 3 anomalies to add up before the 4th killing blow. And it was just this. Like, really? How did I keep missing this? Dude, it's a break in pattern. What do you mean this consistently kept flying under my radar. What in the ever-living... Granted, I will say this room is so intentionally cluttered that it makes sense for more anomalies to slip by here in all places. And goddamn, it did not feel good when I finally saw this and put 2 and 2 together. If anything, I was offended. But after realizing this and picking up on some other devilishly small changes, I made it all come together for my 7th attempt, which was finally the one I beat the night on. I felt both relieved and over this entry at the same time, and it solidified for me at this point that my biggest contender for possibly ending full Gauntlet runs will be here. And you wanna know what the best part of this is? I was having this much trouble on normal mode. Again, I don't know what it was specifically, but this game was just being a beast for me to handle. And while the hard mode didn't give me too much of a problem,
relatively speaking,
that's because I had so much time spent in normal mode. So most typical things that could spawn, I was able to spot rather quickly if they did. It was the new ones for hard mode alone that got me out, and by God, they are devious. Maybe for some people this won't be too challenging, but good Lord, I did not take to this one as easily as the other ones. It was a struggle to finish it out, and my stats very much reflect that. Overall, for normal mode, I spent roughly 150 minutes, about 2.5 hours, just to beat this once. I died 6 times, with 7 attempts being made all around, and I found a grand total of 110 anomalies. For hard mode, I spent 101 minutes, or 1.68 approximately, for hours to beat this once. I died only 2 times, with 3 attempts being made, and I found a total of 46 anomalies. If there was one thing that this installment taught me, it was this. These later games are fully coming into that ability to be a more challenging experience. And now, we just have I'm on Observation Duty 8 to practice before going for fully strung together runs. So, like the previous entry, I'm on Observation Duty 8 has 6 levels to choose from, with the ranch being the main focus for us here. Of the scenes to scan through, there are the front porch, the entrance, the kitchen, the living room, the stable, and the backyard. And just like 7, the same reporting system is being used here, just with less anomalies to pick from. The resulting categories are dead body, extra object, intruder, missing object, object movement, object replacement, abyss, camera malfunction, light anomaly, and steam/smoke/fog. It should be noticed that if something were to pop up as an anomaly and it's not on the list though, a new option for that change specifically will be available then and there. Also, the button in the bottom right corner for the right-click menu from 7 is no longer there. I guess it was just found to be redundant to have 2 methods to access the right-click menu, which is for global reporting. I don't think I mentioned that until now, but that's what the game labels it as. Now, while I was expecting this game to be similar in difficulty to 7, it actually didn't take me as long as the previous entry to beat. It still took me a good amount of time, but not as much as 7, at least for normal mode. And I think the reason for this is because most scenes aren't overly cluttered with details, nor too empty. I'd say pretty much all of them are in the middle between those 2 ends, and that let me naturally remember to be broad in my searching rather than over analyzing because there's just so much or so little to sift through. Also, just adjusting to the new environment had some play in this, which is somewhat surprising since the idea of getting used to a new environment wasn't that much relevant until now after the last title. I mean, with 3, 4, 5, and 6, I was quick to keeping up with the new locales, but now it's much more of a bigger part in learning the game. My first attempt even highlights that, with only being about 12 minutes or so before I died. Getting used to everything here and remembering details to that degree I felt was necessary, more so than the other ones for an intensive reason, and it definitely took a moment, but after that, it wasn't so bad. My second and third run were on the longer end, being roughly 25 to 19 minutes respectively, and I died from simply letting something slip. Not from slacking off or hyper-focusing on the wrong thing, but a simple change that I was able to pick up on almost immediately and remember for later once I realized. And by my 4th attempt, it came together for a relatively smooth ride. I will say, like with the previous game, 8 also likes to let the player hang for a while before spawning something in. So the paranoia from that was still there when I went into this, but I feel like I had a better hold on it so as to not psych myself out. When I knew I was waiting, I knew it more certainly this time around, thanks to that adjustment induced horrendously by 7. In terms of my experience for this one, it's pretty similar to the last game overall, just minus the whole not adapting fast enough to getting my ass beat, and I don't have too many notes. I did kind of scan scenes to implicitly check stuff again, but not as much as before, and I was still mainly sticking to just memorizing anything and everything like a madman. So comparatively for normal mode, it was rather tame. Hard mode definitely gave me more of a struggle though, and that's because this is a new environment with all new handcrafted abominations to find. And man oh man, they're creative.
The last game's anomalies were very small but noticeable differences, so it was less camouflaging and color-wise and more of being unique, tiny, and towards the outer part of the rooms, if that makes sense. Like, I never questioned if it was there when I did eventually realize the swap. I became certain of it not being typical to the environment because its color either stood out or it was just straight up missing. But this game's anomalies, while having some of them be similar in nature to that previous style, very much leaned more into gaslighting territory, as it was things like an item's color or material slightly changing for the anomaly. There are a very good amount of subtle ones where if you are unsure of yourself, you'll most likely believe that that area has always been like that when it in fact hasn't. It's less of, oh yeah, for sure, that's not supposed to be there, and more of, I don't think that's supposed to be there, but I could justify why it could be. Obviously, I applaud the dev for being able to pull this off, but man, in regards to this challenge, it makes me so much more hesitant. I never felt confident when playing either 7 or 8. I was always on my toes, and that was pretty much consistent anytime I opened them up for runs.
But hey, at least I got jump scared by a banana by the end of it. To wrap this up, I spent around 86 minutes or 1.43 hours to beat this game on normal mode once. I had 3 deaths with 4 attempts being made, and I found 54 anomalies in total once I completed the night. For hard mode, I tacked on an extra 23 minutes, resulting in about 109 minutes total, or 1.82 hours, to beat this level once. I had 4 deaths with 5 overall attempts being made instead, and I found a slightly larger count of 78 anomalies once I finished this mode. So with all that said, that concludes my practice rounds. Now I can move on to full gauntlet runs. But first, let's do a grand adage of all these stats across all games. I have the numbers, so might as well have some more fun. Within my runs to beat each game once, I clocked in at a grand total of 633 minutes, or roughly 10.55 hours. I had a total of 20 deaths across the board, with 28 attempts all around, and to top it all off, I found a whopping 467 anomalies by the end of it. If you add the hard mode stats on top of that, it bumps my 633 minutes to 893 minutes, or 14.8 hours. Takes my 20 deaths and 29 attempts to 27 deaths and 38 attempts, and raises my 467 anomalies found to 637 anomalies found. But now it's time for the last act, the fully strung together Iron Man. So to be totally honest with you guys, while I do have a good chunk of footage in regards to practice and official runs for this video, I didn't keep everything. Obviously for storage reasons, since, you know, this isn't a quick challenge to do. And one of the things that I didn't end up clearing off of my hard drive was my very first gauntlet run. I didn't really expect my first attempt to go anywhere too far, and I definitely was expecting to have a good amount of tries by the end of this, so I said, I can probably chuck this one. I don't think it'll matter too much. Then, a small amount of time later, I realized, oh, that was actually kind of dumb. I could have just held on to it for longer before taking the axe to it. So I'll just do my best to summarize it. Not like the footage for this video is completely necessary. I'm just going to be describing the same thing repeatedly, but whatever. Starting out this run, I was feeling good. I knew that the first few installments were going to be a breeze, as they were the ones that I felt the most confident in. Especially one since I've seen it the most and was going to continue seeing it the most, and I was right about that. I'm on Observation Duty 1 was literally of no issue for me. If anything, this game felt like a time burner for me, and I was just chatting the entire time about anything and everything just to stop it from being a drag. I wasn't really fully paying that much attention either, which just goes to show that I knew how to handle this one more than any other entry. But this does go to highlight how doing full gauntlet runs for this could potentially get boring, as with any endurance challenge really, and that mental hurdle of, oh my god, what I've committed myself to, this is going to take forever, may take hold way sooner than I thought. I was expecting maybe after 2 runs or so is when I'd get that sense of fatigue, but nah, it was somewhat immediate. Or at least knowing that that feeling is closer rather than farther off. It is what it is though. So after closing out the first entry with practically no sweat, I moved on to I'm on observation duty 2, and just like the previous title, that one wasn't a problem for me. Again, this was just another moment in the attempt where the game felt like a time burner. I did make sure to give it some more attention than 1. As I'd say, there is some more stuff here that could easily slip by if you truly are slacking more than anything, but it wasn't anything intense. I simply kept to the cycle of scanning rooms, double checking the cheeky spots, waiting for obvious ones to happen, and then looping back to the starting room. Pretty straightforward. I was also just chatting throughout most of it about anything and everything. 2 was rather uneventful for me in the grand scheme of this run. Now, going into 3, just like with 1 and 2, I was very confident that I'd be able to do it with no problem. And the night reflected that pretty well. I kept cycling through the rooms like a machine and found anomalies as soon as they practically appeared. There was some concern though at the middle of the night as the warning message for too many anomalies did appear, but I sorted that out quickly and was back to not being worried about it. This did give me a little kick though to not autopilot too much, as that could allow for silly mistakes, and those kind of slips are the last thing I want given the nature of how long a completed run would take. Again, this isn't some high skill, mechanically intensive challenge I'm attempting, but rather a marathon. The main enemy here is keeping pace and not letting myself mess it up. But with that said, I closed out 3 with some newfound energy and was on to 4, which once completed would put me past the halfway point and signal the passing of at least 2 hours. At the start of this entry, I was still feeling good about myself. I knew this was the point where I transitioned to the back half of the series once done, and that honestly was a relief for me. All the games leading up to this point felt like time burners before really getting into what mattered, and knowing that I'd be past that part was a motivator to keep at it. It tracks that the start of this gauntlet is the most difficult mentally, since it feels like unnecessarily complicated waiting, but damn, I didn't realize how hard that would hit. Like, truly, the timing aspect to this was always a thought in the back of my mind. I put that to the side though and went through this night relatively smoothly. I did have another slight moment here as the warning message also popped up in the middle of the loop, like with 3, but I managed to quell that overflow just as fast, and it wasn't too much of like an uh-oh.
It was more just kind of like, oh, all right.
I was still talking about whatever I could at this point, yet it wasn't as consistent as before. It was here that I knew that I'll have to start locking in, and so talking less was the natural outcome. Not complete silence though. Now, I'm just going to combine 5 and 6 here, as these ones went by without a single hitch. Like, there was no warning message at all throughout the night. I felt really on top of changes as they were happening, and it seemed like I was just waiting for stuff to happen more or less. My chatter became less too, even with feeling great about how it was going, but I was at the stage of not wanting to mess it all up, as past 6 was the 2 last games, meaning 3 hours has passed, and I just need to finish the final one. Really not much to note here. Finally, I arrived at what I was considering my biggest obstacle for full gauntlet attempts. I'm on observation duty 7. Since this one gave me the hardest time in practice, I was fully expecting it to do the same here, and even more likely cause me to fail. It wasn't easy before, so I shouldn't think it'll be easy now. Granted, I'm more used to it at this point compared to freshly getting into it, but I wasn't going to let myself be fully at ease, knowing it probably still has ammo to surprise me with. So, I started off the night being on high alert. I was able to catch most things in the beginning, and I felt like I wasn't waiting a lot for stuff to start swapping. This entry immediately began throwing what it could, and I was responding in kind rather well. As the night went on though, I was getting more hesitant in my ability, and more time was passing where it felt like everything was the same. I was a little over halfway with completing this installment when I started to worry, and it was here where I really started to doubt myself, as the dreaded warning message popped up on my screen to inform me of what I was expecting to happen. Part of me wasn't surprised, while the other part of me was trying to focus because I knew I could do this. But my self-doubt was not letting this go by so easily, and something that I should have clocked earlier stayed around for longer than it should have. I even called out the difference somewhat early on, that being these chairs swapping to smaller ones, but I didn't believe myself enough to try reporting it to C, and I didn't want to start adding to that penalty counter if I could. Lo and behold though, I should have just pulled the trigger, as I soon died after that, with the chairs being replaced, showing up at the top of the anomaly list for ones I missed before the finishing blow. A little unceremonious, considering I knew the change and didn't believe in myself, but that doesn't change the fact that I was completely lost on the other ones. This just reinforced in my mind that this entry still has some absolutely fuck-ass changes to give, and that I need to be more prepared for it in future runs. With this attempt coming to a close, I was now sent back to the beginning, and after spending a little under 3.5 hours to get to that point, I was ready to give it another shot, which I actually kept the footage for this time. Now, I will admit, failing at an attempt that long and then immediately going back for another run may have been a little bit silly of me. At that moment in time, I felt like I had the energy for it, but looking back on it now, I don't think I realized how late it was when doing so. I think it was around like 9:30, maybe 10 or so at night when restarting, which meant it'd be closer to 2 in the morning if I were to complete it. I mean, I guess I was more willing, but it's not like doing a challenge like this so late would benefit me in any way. Regardless, I started up I'm on Observation Duty 1 and carried on without much hesitation, and just like before, this game was solved for me. Truly, I felt like I didn't need to give my all here. I could practically do it with my eyes closed, which is ironic to say given the genre that this game is, but you get the sentiment. So this portion of my attempt mainly consisted of me just lamenting the fact that this marathon was going to be long, and that dying on 7 was a huge waste of time, since I might just get back there and die again. If it wasn't me repeatedly bringing that up, it was then me talking about how trying to stay talkative during these runs would be a challenge in of itself, as I do plan on uploading the winning run alongside this video, and I didn't want it to be done in complete silence. Or how the slip up in 7 could have been avoided if I just went for it. This first game in this series was really just becoming a time burner for me, and it wasn't helping to motivate me to continue doing this whole thing, knowing how much more there was to be had. I finished it out though with no anomalies being left unreported, and I moved on to I'm on Observation Duty 2 with a little more positive energy than I started out with. Just like my previous experience in my first run, I'm on Observation Duty 2 really didn't give me any trouble while playing it. It was, again, an installment that I felt good enough at where I wasn't worried about accidentally losing. I could be more at ease here and just do whatever, which is both a plus and a minus, since I don't need to worry, but also I still have to like sit through 30 minutes of it before moving on. It felt so much like a drag, but not as much as the first game. So once again, I was just mainly speaking out loud during the segment about anything, like how I'm going to edit this full video, how I'm going to do the full run of like the entire Gauntlet, whether or not I should be talking because that could distract me, and if I should censor certain differences since YouTube may not like seeing some of the stuff this game has. I also started openly speculating if something like this would be better as a live stream, as I feel like it gets the audience more engaged compared to a set in stone, recorded and edited experience. Either way though, this is still a video at the end of the day, so that thought doesn't really change anything. But let me know if you want, whether you agree about that or disagree asides. From that though, I finished out the night no problem. 24 out of 25 anomalies found. I wasn't going to worry about what I missed. I was just going to carry on and put all my focus on the next game. I'm on Observation Duty 3. Yes. Good ol' I'm on Observation Duty 3. The one that requires more keyboard inputs than any of the other ones. You'd think this would be a point in the challenge where the change of base would benefit you, and change in mechanics along with more physical stimulation to give you a second wind somewhat, but truthfully, I feel like 3 was just a mental hurdle more than anything for me. Something about just patrolling the house so robotically, especially just to move on to the next game, which is the real transition through the halfway point, had me feeling very meh. This was one of the ones that I felt very confident on, and so just getting through it was becoming a chore. And it was at this point in my attempt that I realized, why the hell did I decide to do another run so late at night? It was a little past 11 p.m. for me when getting into I'm on Observation Duty 3, and my eyes were starting to burn with how much I was staring at my computer screen. On a physical level, I was questioning why I did this now instead of waiting. This was also the point where I started slipping up mentally, as I took a picture of an anomaly and then just didn't hit send to report for way longer than I should have.
I'm not much of a gamer as I used to be when I was younger, because when I was younger, when everyone was younger, they was able to just do more shit for some fucking reason and be completely fine with it. And now it's like, ugh, I've been playing this game for like over an hour. I need a break. Like literally. Oh, that's right. Whoops. Forgot you need to double click. My bad.
Once I did realize this, though, I immediately thought of how stupid it would be if I died to a silly mistake like that later on, especially if it was late into the run. Aside of that, the rest of the night went very smoothly. I was on top of things and just chugging along without further incident. It got to a point too where instead of just making casual conversation about whatever, I was just kind of going from room to room being like, oh yeah, nothing's changed. Yep. This all checks out. Looks like I'm just waiting. Like, I was low energy at this rate and I just wanted to get through 3. It was just a total drag. I closed it out though with 27 anomalies found and was ready to move on to 4, the halfway point, an indicator that 2 hours have passed if I was successful at it. Starting out the night for I'm on Observation Duty 4, I was 2 things. Tired and bored. Knowing that I still had 30 minutes to sit through before reaching the second half of this challenge, along with being physically ready to just go to bed, had me at an energetic flatline. I was just being a mindless drone at this rate, and I didn't have much to say either. And it was at the beginning of this game that another thing happened that really solidified that I chose to do this at the wrong point in time. As I was scanning through the cameras, I entered the study and saw Julius Caesar's head chilling on the couch. I saw that pretty much immediately, it's hard to miss, and went to report the extra object.
I don't have it in me to just keep talking. Like, there's the part of me that knows that, like, I don't really need to for this. Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck? Oh, I had that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I did it again. Having a one-off of something like that, a little concerning, but nothing alarming. I just need to lock in, and it'll be fine, right? But two times of doing something like that? Now, I'm the main opponent for this run more than any of the other games I'm playing could be. Clearly, I just needed to refocus myself here, but it doesn't seem like I'm doing a good job at it, so we'll just have to see where this night run goes. Obviously, only up from here. After that small hiccup though, things went well for the next few minutes. I felt on top of things, and I knew I was waiting for changes to come in whenever I encountered downtime. Slowly but surely, the clock kept moving forward, and I was inching my way to 6 a.m. no problem. That is, until around 4:30, when the first anomaly went unnoticed. The crate of apples on top of the microwave disappeared, and I, for some reason, did not realize this, even though that was a detail I was consistently checking beforehand. Ironically too, after that change in environment, I felt on an instinctual level that I was missing something. But I guess I just became detail blind in that moment as I carried on finding another anomaly in its place. I got a little further into the night with that anomaly active, then another swap happened, that being the fan stopped moving in the study, and I did not immediately realize this one either. And by the time I did, the clock was at 5 a.m. So I went to report it, knowing that I'm at the final stretch for this game.
Oh, the fan has stopped. Object movement. Otherwise, I'd consider that other. It's not moving, so object. God, you gotta actually be kidding me, dude. Dude.
Yep, my mental fatigue was too high at this point, and it caused me to needlessly die, missing stuff I was checking previously on and misreporting when I needed to not do that. I mean, can't say I'm surprised. I started this run at 10 p.m. and it was now close to midnight. I'll just have to pack it in and attempt runs tomorrow. All right, it's a new day. I feel mentally refreshed. Let's do some more runs. And oh boy, did I start them absolutely pumped. Yeah, so I just was not feeling it here. Like, I knew what I needed to do, and the game went by without any issues. But man, I did not have it in me to even try talking. Like, I started to actually be more conversational when I booted up I'm on observation duty too. But that first 30 minutes for this run was just complete and utter silence. Kind of sets the tone for how I felt about this challenge at this moment in time. Like, knowing how long this will take just had me wanting to finish it sooner rather than later. But alas, I still need to get there if I want to see it through. So that's one segment of 30 minutes done. And now it is on to the next one. I'm on observation duty 2 went as you'd expect, which is without worry. I talked a little more here, like I just mentioned, but nothing too much. It was just about how long this could take me if I kept failing at one of the last 3 entries. Nothing really much to note here, and thankfully that weird bug I had in the practice rounds for 2 hadn't happened to me yet. If it did, and I did actually die from it, I think I would have just straight up stopped attempting runs for the day. Even if that only took about an hour of my time, I just would have said, nah, not feeling it. Anyways, on to I'm on observation duty 3, my absolutely favorite point in this gauntlet. I'm on observation duty 3 was same old, same old. Nothing much to note here. Didn't say a lot. Was 30 minutes done and dusted. Now on to 4. Okay, so with going into 4 and previously getting out on it because I was just not there mentally, I was determined to not make that mistake again. After all, it was literally something I would have noticed beforehand, but just didn't due to being tired. And how did I ensure I wouldn't be an idiot again? Well, quite simple. I shut the fuck up. Okay, I didn't stay completely silent during this game, but I definitely locked in more because it was stupid how I died in my previous attempt on this one. And by 5 a.m., I actually was then completely quiet. Messing up once on this entry due to lack of alertness is one thing, but getting out on it again, one refreshed, would be another. And I didn't want that to happen. So with that found conviction to just get past this without any possible incident, I went into the final hour determined and hawk-eyed to find anything that changed. And what would you know? I closed out the game in a smooth manner just shortly after. No problems, nothing. I reported 27 anomalies and was ready to move on past the halfway point and tackle I'm on observation duty 5. Now, with being in the back half of this gauntlet, I was pretty dead set on seeing this through, and my demeanor really reflected that because I was making minimal small talk. It wasn't anything like I'm on observation duty 1 where I genuinely didn't make a single noise, but if I were to make a sound, it was either me yawning, acknowledging an anomaly in one room, or mentioning how frames dropped. So something swapped.
Something spawned. Something changed. Frames just lagged. Good.
Obviously, the frame drop can be because of anything happening with the game, but it's never led me astray before. Probably just means my computer's getting old. because it is. Either way, I was in the zone at this point in time, and I went through 5 without hitting any bumps on the way. It was some smooth sailing occurring here, and I was ready to ride that wave into I'm on observation duty 6 and beyond. So I closed out the century with 26 anomalies found and a good attitude for the next installment. Hopping into 6, I was ready for endgame. And I don't mean that from the perspective of expecting a challenge, but more from the perspective of, I know how this one works. Throw whatever you want. I'll be there to catch it. And while I didn't have my face cam on for this challenge video, as that's just another thing that would have added to the video size, just know that for the majority of this game, I was vibing. I was bobbing my head, getting into a groove. Truly, I was in a chill flow state. I knew I was going to be able to beat this game as long as I didn't start slacking, and it was in the bag for me to get another shot at 7, and then hopefully 8 if I were so vigilant in my observing. So kicking off the night, I was feeling good. First few minutes, nothing happened. After that, boom, drink on the counter, reported and sorted. Next few minutes, also nothing. Then wham, fire extinguisher, clocked and rocked. Rinse and repeat this cycle for a while, and soon I was at 2 a.m. A third of the way through the night, meaning about 20 real life minutes left to go. After that, I found some more anomalies. They came, I reported, they went. That sounds weird out of context. Anyways, I kept this up for the next few minutes and things were feeling great. I was feeling great. The mood was great. Even though I didn't have any music playing. I know that while I wasn't halfway through the night yet, this would be a breeze. I was having a wonderful time. One that was now weighed down by the fact that this was a challenge going on to the 3rd hour marker if I were to beat this. I felt confident. I had a quick moment of pause, and then a moment of surprise. What do you mean there's too many anomalies active for your liking? I thought I was on top of them. Did they all just suddenly spawn around the same time? There's no way I'm missing stuff. But regardless, I put those feelings to the side and cracked down on the cameras at hand. And honestly, I resolved the issue rather fast. Won't lie. I reported the missing suitcase, reported the flipped mugs in the private cabin, although they snuck under the radar for a bit, and almost immediately caught the sign in the sleeping cabin switching to instant suffering rather than emergency exit. I was a little taken aback by the fact that I had the warning message pop up like that, but I locked back in on course soon enough, and I was back to vibing. There was a part of me thinking I shouldn't be so carefree if I was slacking enough for the warning message to sound off, but the other part of me was like, man, whatever, you're fine. It was a small slip, it won't happen again. You got this. You already found 2 off the bat, and the 3rd one was probably brought in immediately after the others, so you, at most, have just 1 thing active, if any. And so, I carried on. Slowly but surely, anomaly by anomaly, I got to 3 a.m., then to 3:30 a.m., then to 4 a.m. Soon, it was closing in on 4:30 a.m., and the end was just around the corner. I just had to hold my attention, and I was back up to I'm on observation duty 7.
Is that always been a thing? I don't even want to risk it because I know I only have one little like wrong guess I could make before it reboots, and I feel like a reboot might kill me. Excuse me? What? There's no way.
Yeah, so clearly I was letting myself be too carefree here. Looking back at it, I think if anything, I should have realized the 2 most recent anomalies, at least. But lo and behold, I just wasn't there to fully take it in. One of the changes was even something that I'd consistently check for too, which was this extra faucet in the sleeping cabin. But no, I was too busy thinking there was something wrong with the mirror lighting to really notice. Even though the lighting does look a little weird. But that's besides the point. I have, yet again, let myself fall to a game that I felt confident on. And not for reasons of the tired variety, but rather for reasons of the lowering my guard variety. Although my reaction may not portray it that well, I was actually baffled that this happened, that I let this happen, especially knowing that this run was reaching the 3-hour mark. So what do I do in response to this? Well, I immediately went for the run back.
I went and had an everything bagel. I grabbed 2 bottles and filled them with water. And I also grabbed a sugar-free pop. If I don't fucking log in and get this, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose it.
I mean, I did go for another attempt. It was just after a small intermission. Once I had that everything bagel, though, I was zoned in and ready to hunker down for this run. And I was starting off stronger than before because I had more energy here. I was actually making more conversation. I was spotting anomalies practically as soon as they showed up, and I wasn't letting myself get too comfortable, even for the entry that literally felt solved for me, while staying relatively chill. I've stabilized myself for this attempt, and I was going to keep at it like for the entire run. This is a marathon after all, and so I was going to meet that standard. After 30 minutes of gameplay, some vigilant observing, and a sugar-free pop later, I finished out this game with no anomalies left unreported. A complete 22 out of 22. 1 down, 7 to go. Moving into I'm on observation duty 2, it felt like the same old, same old. I wasn't worried about much. I kept my attention in shape, and I was idly chattering just to pass the time. After some typical anomalies like saw a snake appearing in the backyard, a comically large ketchup bottle spawning in the kitchen, and the man-child showing up in the bathroom, it was the end of the night. And that was a wrap for I'm on observation duty 2. 2 down, 6 to go. Now, it was time for the game that was the most mentally boring for me in this series. Again, this entry just does it for me in terms of being a drag for this Gauntlet challenge, which is funny to think since I like it all things considered otherwise. But man, it was just one of the bigger hurdles for me in regards to keeping my motivation and energy up for the long run. So what do I do for this? Simple. I spoke in an accent.
Very modern, but also not. It's almost as if it harkens back to something that's energy alone, rather than physical layout. Truly a feat to be accomplished, if I do say so myself. Okay, but actually though, it's like I said, this game is like, it's at a fucking crawl for me. Oh my god.
Well, that accident didn't do too much in the end, so I just had to deal with the snail's pace 3 felt like it was going at, and deal with it I did, even if it felt like an eternity. I soon got to 3:30, then 4, then 4:30, then 5, all rather uneventfully, and then the game was over. I finished out the night with 24 anomalies and was ready to find more to keep coming my way. 3 down, 5 more to go. Starting out 4, I knew that I couldn't let myself slip like that one time. It would be silly of me to do something like that again, and it would be an even bigger waste of my time in doing so. But I also knew that I needed to do something to keep my energy stable for the back half of this run. After all, I'm at the halfway point, and once I'm on 2.5, that's 2 hours sunk in to another attempt that could possibly fail. So, to keep myself alert and ready for the foreseeable future of, sitting and staring at a screen, I did what anyone else would do. Squats.
Also, I did. Okay, Jesus Christ, I was like, what the fuck is happening for a second? Okay. It's gonna take a moment for the first one to spawn, so I'm just gonna do some squats. Honestly, at this rate. See, easy 20. Also, it's really ironic that I said to do that, and then I didn't skip the message, because I think the message acts as a grace period, and nothing's going to change when that shit's going. So that's kind of ironic for me to do.
Kind of ironic for me to do this, since, I was just saying I needed to stay focused, but I mean, like, hey, it worked, I guess. Regardless, this game went like every other game up to this point. I felt on top of things, which was accurate this time, and I was feeling better since I was past the mental wall that was 3, and I knew I was getting closer to the finish line. So after another 30 minutes here and a slight pause due to my friend coming to ask me something, I finished out the night with 26 anomalies reported and was ready to tackle the next installment. 4 down, 4 to go. Going into 5, I was still feeling confident. While I let 4 and 6 get me, it was due to myself simply slipping up. And if I could keep myself from doing that here, then this game wouldn't be a problem. But as the night went on, I started talking less and less, and I was getting more tense with each passing minute. I don't know exactly why, but I was beginning to feel on edge with this title. Realistically, I shouldn't have been feeling like this, and if anything, it should have been a healthy amount of skepticism that took hold to keep myself in check. Yet, it was more than just a little amount of distrust. I was fully past that point and had dread in the back of my mind. I think knowing that I did mess up on games that I felt good on was a factor in this, along with knowing that I'm past the halfway point in beating this, so if I fail now, that's another 2 hours gone to finish this gauntlet out. So ultimately, I just had to shoulder this sense of oddity and pay attention to the cameras.
Thank the Lord. Oh my god, man. I don't know what I would have done if I actually lost on that. Freak out, obviously.
Yeah, so I think I was just psyching myself out here. I don't know why, since I was, like, you know, still having to attempt the final 3, but realistically, the ones most likely to tank my attempt isn't this one, it's those ones, but it is what it is. I finished out the night with another 30 anomalies found, as you can see, and was moving on to I'm on observation duty 6 without further questioning of my time with 5. Another one down, just 3 more to go. Once again, I've come within reach of 7, and soon within closer reach of 8. If all things go right here, then I'm on observation duty 6. I've done it before, I can do it another time. I just have to stay alert and stick to the usual check spots, and all should be well. First 5 minutes, 3 anomalies reported, and not a single word said. Another 5 minutes, this time 4 anomalies fixed. Another 5 minutes, another 4 anomalies is spotted, and now we are at the halfway point in the night. 15 minutes total have elapsed, and things are looking good. Just need to keep this up, and 6 will be done without issue.
Jesus Christ, thank the Lord. Oh my god. Oh. Okay.
And just like that, 6 falls. Just 2 more to go.
Okay. Okay. Jesus Christ.
Unlike before, I successfully completed 7, and with that comes the very last hurdle. The last 30 minutes that I just need to survive in order to round out and complete this 4-hour Ironman gauntlet. All I have to simply do is lock in.
Okay. We did 7. We did 7. We can do 8. We can do 8. We can do 8. We got this. We got this. Just need to focus. Breathe. Don't overcompensate. And that's it. That's all we got to do. Oh my god, there's no shot. There's actually no fucking way I was waiting that long for something to change. There's no way. I refuse to believe that. That took forever. Is that considered a dead body? Oh my god, dude. Jesus. Good lord. Oh my god.
And with that, my 4-hour Ironman of all I'm on observation duty games is complete. While it wasn't like I was playing a high-skilled technical challenge, it felt great to be able to finish this, as 4 hours straight of staring at a screen was starting to get to me. I didn't think it would be the worst or anything, but it definitely started to take a toll because, man, when it dragged, like, good lord, for content's sake, having more ups and down here would be great for the video, but no, I actually just wanted this done because of how much it felt like a crawl just to get started on a promising run. But at the same time, a challenge is a challenge, and I committed to this when I didn't really need to, so I can't say much in the grand scheme of things. And who knows, if this does well or someone has a better idea for how to execute this, I'm not opposed to a redux. But for now, this is what was completed, and to round it out, it's time for the final stats.
By the end of this gauntlet, I had 4 attempts, 3 ending in failure. In terms of runtime, I had a grand sum of 730 minutes of in-game playtime once completed, which is about 12.16 hours converted. And just to reiterate, this is strictly made up of time spent in-game, not out of it, so switching between titles and waiting for it to load wasn't added. It's just strictly in-game. Now, for the amount of anomalies found across all installments once a full run was cleared, it comes out to a total of 592 differences reported and fixed. And with that, the I'm on Gauntlet Duty Challenge is beaten. Thank you if you've watched this far into the video. This isn't something that I typically do, but it was something since coming back that I had a want to try my hand at. Normally, I just play indie horror games and other one-offs and stuff that I find interesting for any genre, but this was fun to do, and I know that with trying it out, I can learn, both from feedback and hands-on experience, on how to make the next one better if I so choose. And I do have some ideas here and there for something more like this. Again, though, this isn't the typical thing that I upload, and it definitely takes time to do it. And this definitely took way more time than I originally thought. I think I bit off more than I can chew, even though I wanted to do this because I knew it was going to be a longer project. But I think the payoff's worth it. So yeah, if you find this and enjoy it, I wouldn't count on me immediately being able to fire off another one just like that. If you so please, you can check out my other stuff that I have on this channel, see if that piques your interest, but just watching this all the way through is enough. It means a lot that people would take the chance on this and see what it's about, and I appreciate that. At the same time though, if you want, you can share your thoughts below in the comments about what you like, what you'd change, all that kind of stuff. Like I just mentioned, I'm open to feedback. And if you want as well, you can leave a like, share the video, subscribe, even all that typical content creator jazz. But if you don't, then so be it. I can't tell you what to do. I'm just a guy on the internet. Regardless, I hope you have a good rest of your day, afternoon, night, whatever it may be. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Whatever that may be. And hopefully it, won't take as long. So yeah, goodbye.